Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm Colynn Hlokoff.
And I'm Meridee Hlokoff.
And welcome to Spiritual Sisters with Sass, the podcast where two sisters with a passion for spirituality and a touch of sass come together to explore the exciting world of self-improvement.
That's right, Colynn. We embarked on this incredible journey together, diving into different self-improvement techniques, yoga practices, and a whole array of life experiences.
Yeah, and through it all, we've managed to create lives that are abundant, happy, and constantly evolving. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it, Meridee?
You bet, sis. We've got two very different perspectives on life, but that's what makes this podcast so special. I'm all about diving in head first into life's adventures and embracing every challenge with a bit of sass. While Colynn here, she's got her own unique approach.
Yep, that's me. And I'm all about the yoga, mindfulness, and finding my zen. And together we make the perfect balance.
So whether you're looking for some wisdom, a few laughs, or just some heartfelt stories, you're in the right place. We're here to share our personal experiences and insights with you, all while exploring the wild and diverse world of self-improvement.
So grab your headphones and get ready for a fantastic journey with us. Spiritual Sisters with Sass is here to uplift, inspire, and keep it real.
Thanks for tuning in, lovely listeners. Let's dive in.
Spirit and sass. Here we go. Okay. So hello, everybody, and welcome to Spiritual Sisters with Sass. This week, we are talking about external validation, self-love and acceptance, how to heal our need for validation, as well as truly love and accept ourselves. And so let's get straight into it, Lynn. I'm so excited because today's conversation really surfaced, and Lynn and I were starting to discuss what we were going to talk about today, and we really wanted to get into it. We were like, wait, we got to save this for the podcast. Yeah. So the way this conversation starts is that I was talking to my coach, and we were having a conversation about what he said to me, what was so different in November? Because I said, I'm finding that there's something I feel like there's a block. And he's like, that a lot of us look for a block when there isn't a block there. We're just looking for something to be wrong because things aren't going exactly the way we want them to. And I was like, ooh, that one hits hard. He said, have you looked at where you've come from? And I was like, okay, so yeah, fair. I've come way further than I ever even dreamed. In my wildest dreams, I never thought I'd be making the money that I'm making. And yet here I sit making the money I'm making and questioning why it's not enough. So his whole thing was that we're never happy because we are never enough. So then in this one video, he was asking a question about what is your biggest fear? So Lynn, what is your biggest fear? Your greatest fear in the world? You know what came to me immediately when he asked that question? I'm not even joking. Immediately, the answer to me was never being enough. And I wrote it down immediately while everyone else in the video was coming up with being a failure, not succeeding, not hitting a certain level. And he's like, all of the things you guys are saying is never being enough. And that was the first thing that hit my brain, that I was like, this is it, never being enough. I wrote it down. And so the whole video was based on that. And then I have my call with him. And so we're talking and I'm like, my income's not where I want it to be. And of course he asks me where did you come from and all the things, appreciate what you have. And I did, and I took a minute to sit in it. And he said, okay, now the other thing we're going to move into now though, is you keep telling me that it was November, that there was something different here. So he said, I want to dig into what was different in November. Did you approach your staff differently? Did you do marketing differently? Were you showing up differently? And then I was like, not really. And then I was like, I guess in some ways, yeah. And he's like, what was the core of why you were showing up differently? And I sat on that for a week because I was like, I don't know. And he's like, this is something you need to spend some time thinking about. We'll come back to this. So I really sat down and spent some time on it. And it fucking just all of a sudden, bing, in November, I was actively dating. External validation, external validation, external validation. Because You post your pictures, the guys then comment, "You're so beautiful. I don't understand why you're single because you're beautiful, driven, motivated, fit, blah, blah, blah." Not only that, but let's also talk about the validation from my sister. I write a list of all the things I want in a man, and she says, "But those are just all the things you are," which is why you don't think that those things are that much to ask. Again, external validation. Sometimes we do need somebody to remind us because we look at ourselves and beat the shit out of ourselves. But reminding us to validate ourselves, which is, I feel like, what Lynn does for me often. She doesn't come in and are like, "You're so pretty." She comes in and is like, "Yeah, but what did you do to get to where you are?" So when I'm talking to my coach, he's like, "Okay, so dating, what about dating?" And I was like, "Actually, I feel like I have this glow that my energy changes and I'm just so like, so almost into myself." And I was like, "I don't want to say it like that." And he's like, "In this place, we pump ourselves up. We are like, fuck yeah, I did. I'm killing it. I looked great. I felt great. The energy I was putting off was great." And so I had to sit with that. And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "So now we need to talk about how you can find a way to fall in love with yourself." And I was like, "Ooh." He's like, "And why that external validation is so important for all of us." And so that's where this podcast today and this conversation that we're going to have today is basically stemming around, because Lynn and I have both done so much work. And yet my biggest fear is never being enough. So now that I've said that, do you feel that that is your biggest fear?
Yeah, as I was like, what was coming in my head was being alone, but I don't want to admit that. And then why would I be alone? Because I'm not enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even when you're looking at those things, you guys, and I ask you this question, I want you to look at the reason, and then I want you to look below the reason. Why would you be alone? Why would you be a failure? And if you were a
Right.
failure, what does that mean? Being a failure means I wasn't enough. And if I'm
Right.
not enough, I'm not going to be loved, which is most of our fears. Because not being enough means I'm not worthy of love, not my own love, and not someone else's love.
Well, that was
So,
immediately when you said that, my response was, well, you need to date yourself.
yes, you did.
Yeah. So that is like, it was when I took yoga teacher training, which is like 10 years ago now, more than 10 years ago. And it was the first time I was involved with 20 women. So back in the day, I was a guy's girl for sure. I was the only girl allowed to go on guys' trips.
We
I went
struggled
to,
with, I think we struggled with women, trusting women because of our
yeah,
relationship with our mom.
I
So
mean,
I would say the same thing. I like men more than I like women, but that's not really the truth.
well, that was the truth then.
Yes.
And, at the time, I was very codependent with my husband. He is a logger, and I was constantly in logging camp with him. I was in the logging truck with him. Like, I was with men all the time. And I remember even when, like, the men would come home from camp, which I also would come home from camp then, right? And then we would go and hang out. It was like, the wives are supposed to hang out. I never knew what to say. I always ended up like hanging out with going outside and hanging out with the dudes, doing all that shit. So I remember 200-hour teacher training, there's 20 women. And I remember the first woman I had a huge issue with was, I mean, on the first day, she was just bougie as fuck. It was all about looks. And there was like a cop came on a motorcycle and she ended up getting a picture with him. And I remember thinking like, ugh, like, because why? Because she's my competition. Not anything else other than she was my competition. And it took me some recognition throughout teacher training and all of the concepts that are brought up that like, oh, so I'm constantly wanting external validation from my father because that is definitely where I got like, I'm not physically enough. We talked about this in the douchebags episode, and his ideal woman was anorexically skinny. He
A
told me
zero zero.
he told me that the perfect woman has a thigh gap. Like I want to just share right now, like.
Okay, can we both? Can we? It's like, I don't have a thigh gap either. Oh, and look at my
Like,
camel toe. Sorry, guys.
there's no thigh gap going on there. And
Nope.
I remember thinking, like, at one point looking at my own thighs and thinking, what is this? Because it's not on legs that I normally see. And I remember look at when I separate, it literally is just extra. And I remember telling my coach years ago that I think it's my body's way of saying fuck you to my father, because I will never have a fucking thigh gap ever. So this is the first time I bonded with women because I opened up, and just by acknowledging the fact that like I was externally seeking attention to tell me that I'm beautiful or something from someone else was so important and motivating for me. That's why whenever I was in a breakup or something like that, I'd start to lose weight, get, really fit. People would start talking to me about this, blah, 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 blah. Oh, you look so good. And
Yep.
I think, and I've shared this before, is like the reality is that any time previously in my unconscious life that I became fit and started like getting compliments on how I looked really good was around weight loss, which is why I no longer comment on people's bodies. And usually that weight loss, and you were there, was very unhealthy. It was fueled by red wine, cigarettes, a fucking bagel a day.
Yeah, no food.
No, it was not healthy. And they were always very like stressful, confusing times. And I felt empowered in the fact that everybody's commenting on how good I look, even though the way I got to how good I look was not healthy in any way. And when I was happy is times where I would put on weight because I was comfortable. And then nobody said I looked good when I put on weight. They might comment because I definitely get it in my boobs.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, last night we were talking about that, and I was like, my boobs are a part of my image. I've always had boobs, like, since grade 10, I think. And they've never been, like, super small. So this is a way that I'll get people to not look at my belly.
Okay, I get it.
Hmm.
Very interesting. So, and for me, I feel like, okay, so for me, actually, this just all of a sudden surfaced for me.
Okay.
Grade 10, going into grade 10, the summer going into grade 10, in grade 9, not many people paid attention to me. Nobody looked at me. They're like, I was just a kid in school. And then the summer going into grade 10, and this is so interesting. You plucked my eyebrows, and then we sat with Tamara, and Tamara taught us, she was a professional makeup artist, and she taught us how to do makeup. Now, it was something that I took to like so quick. It was something that I was like, I love this and I'm so good at it, and I'm still really good at it. You like, I can do hair. And I was like, let me do your makeup then. And it worked for us.
Yeah.
And it would always be like, if we went somewhere, Lynn would do the hair and I would always do the people's makeup. But she taught us how to do makeup. And I'll never forget, it was my birthday going into grade 10. So I was 15 and we went to Playland. Do you remember this? We went to Playland, and I don't think I'll ever forget it because that was the first time we were walking around Vancouver and multiple men all of a sudden would be turning and look at me as I walked by and making comments and paying attention to me. And it was the first time it had ever happened, ever, that I was conscious of. I shouldn't say that because, again, we go back to being a kid and there are pieces, but those pieces I feel like kind of stopped because it became inappropriate for dad's friends to make comments about the way I looked once I hit a certain age. And I remember walking through Playland and these, like, I thought these hot guys, like, I thought they were hot. And I'd be like, Lynn and I would like walk around and stare at people all the time and be like, wow. And we were very obvious about the way we would do it because we're weird that way, I think, especially when we're together. But we make, like, in joking ways, make people uncomfortable in the way that we're like, hey, you're hot as they walk by, because that's who we are. But it was like it started happening to me and they were staring at me. And so we'd be staring at each other as they walked by. And it would be like this whole head turn thing. And I remember that being such a pivotal moment for me in really, truly, I then became also, I think my personality changed, my attitude changed. Suddenly I was hanging out with the popular group. I was hanging out with all the hot guys like Jeff. Do you remember Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
Rob, all the hot guys I was hanging out with. We hung out with these two guys. They actually, this is such a funny story. They brought this guy that my sister was friends with and had a crush on. We invited them to our house for Monday Night Football. Do you remember this? And he brought his friend for you. Remember, Rob brought his friend for you, Jeff. And then Jeff and I spent the entire night on the chair together, talking, doing all these things. And then when he left, I was like, he wouldn't lie to me. We're best friends. And you were like, shut the fuck up. Him and I became best fucking friends, like the best of friends. And it was such an interesting thing. Him and I don't think we ever kissed. I don't know if we ever dated, but he became my best friend and he was one of the hottest guys in the school. And it was such an interesting thing that it happened right after we went to Playland and I hit grade 10 and I went to, because there was Abby Junior and Abby Senior, and Abby Junior was 8 to 10 and Abby Senior was 10 to 12. And I actually started Abby Senior in grade 10. And suddenly I'm hanging out with the popular kids. Suddenly I'm one of the popular group. Suddenly I'm hanging out with all the hot guys. Suddenly I'm a hot girl. And only in that way, like I was a hot girl. But then Lynn and I moved. My mom kicked us out and we moved to Williams Lake. We didn't go to school for a couple months because we were really fucked up. And then Dad's like, you guys have to get back in school. So we go back to school and suddenly we're the hottest girls in the entire school. Because we're the new ones. Do you remember that?
I remember being fresh meat, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In a very
And
small, it was a small town. I do talk about this a lot because then even when we would go back home, my friend group would comment on like how good I looked. And it was the confidence from having external validation. Because remember in Williams Lake, it was like the pucks, the hockey guys were the big deal.
The rugby guys, what were the rugby?
I can't even remember. There we go.
What did you just say? What's happening? You look confused.
We there was a freeze.
Okay. But
The
so there
rugby
was like
guys.
this, there was this like external validation that gave us confidence about who we were, about the way we looked, not even about who we were, about the way we looked.
Yeah.
But then we carried that into other things. For me, as I got older, it became more about who I am that made me confident about myself. But then there's always that self-doubt that comes in. So I think this is the great place for us to really dig into that external validation and what it did to us or how it made us feel so that we could get into those things. But then noticing for me, when the external validation was no longer there, how it affected me or how I was affected by it, I should say, because it wasn't doing anything to me. I allowed myself to be more confident because of it. And then when it wasn't there, I suddenly didn't feel as confident. And then I suddenly was doubting myself. And suddenly maybe I'm not enough. And suddenly all of the same shit resurfaced. So one of the points that my coach brought up the other day was, do you go to your spouse and say, how does this outfit look? Or do you feel confident putting the outfit on and not caring how anybody feels about it? That's external validation. That's a great way to look at your external validation. And for me, that noticing as I'm doing all this, because let's not kid here, we've done a significant amount of personal growth. But to see that this external validation is still such a major factor that it changes, that I change my energy when I'm feeling those things, so much so that because my energy has changed, my income went up to 150%. So I make, say, the 100%, I almost like I did 50% more than my 100% because my energy changed. So with the work we've done, I'd love to hear your opinion on what you think is the best way to start accepting ourselves as to being enough. Because obviously this is something we're working on every single day.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's no hidden fucking thing that I've been in a down, I mean, since like May of last year, right? I've been very open about it. And not only did the energy come down, but so did my finance.
Ninja.
But so did my finances, like so did a lot of other things. And I today I referred to it as like I was put in timeout by God.
I kind of love that.
I needed to be reminded a little of some things. First and most about like my standards being dropped, or the fact that I don't even actually have standards, and many other things. So now that I'm coming out of timeout, I'm really appreciating that this fucking fly is gonna die. That's the yogi in me. It's like I tried. But motherfucker, I'm gonna kill you if you don't get away from me. A peace on earth, love and light, like all that shit. And it fucked off. So you're lucky, motherfucker.
Shit, this is funny.
So I think we've got two good. The thigh gap, fucking here's our thighs would be a good highlight, and then now I'm gonna fucking kill shit as a yogi.
It's so
with
funny. Oh my God.
two highlights.
This is an episode perhaps you should watch.
Yes. So, what was I talking about again? What rant was I off on?
Oh my God, I got lost in the whole
You
terrifying
forgot
peace, love,
too.
light. We were talking about like the validation.
Oh yeah,
and
like
you're
the
coming back.
mindset and all that. Yes. And so now that it's like now I'm out of timeout, I feel like I'm coming back, and also things are following suit. And one of the big lessons is self-love in all of this, because Rafa read a meme yesterday that said something like, do you feel better when you're making more money? When you have time off, do you feel like you should be doing more? It had a list of things that I was like, check, 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 check. And he's like, welcome to internalized capitalism. And I was like, oh yes, like self-love is so much more important than external. So I was doing teacher trainings a couple years ago in the summer. I think it was July 2022. It was. And my intentions became, look, I don't want to care what people think of me. So please help me with this. Well, ask to be patient, God will put you in a bunch of lineups, right? So ask to not care, God's going to put a bunch of people in your face that are like, you're masculine, you're this, you're that, you're mean girling and all this shit. So other people mean girling me, by the way. And so I remember I was doing the teacher training, and I was teaching a yoga class. Everybody was in Shavasana, and I thought, I want Gary Melkin's End of Suffering to be the song. So I go over to my phone, hit Spotify, hit search, put in Gary, and it says Gary V and Jay Shetty podcast, How to Not Care What Others Think of You. So I screenshotted that very quickly and then put on Gary Melkin's song and then continued on. Well, I'm leaving teacher training. It's my birthday, and I'm driving from Dominical to Jaco, where I lived at the time. And I start listening to the podcast, which is about an hour and a half, which is how long the drive is. And it says, Gary Vee says, if you don't want to care what other people think of you in the bad, you can't care what people think of you in the good. And like, that's my validation a lot. Even when people like a lot of times clients will say, you've changed my life. Now I say, no, I haven't, you have. And I do fully believe that, but just the fact that they're coming to me about the impact I've had on their life is very heart-filling for me.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, because in the next teacher training that I had was when somebody actually called me a piece of fucking shit, that I was completely unqualified to be teaching teacher training. I was the most unsafe person. Like, these things that were coming at me were so untrue. I can spend 8 hours telling you why what she said was so untrue and she was projecting. But it also hit me, and I went, my grandma died. It was our grandma died. It was a crazy spiral of like, also I didn't leave teacher training. I was just like having to teach these people that fucking hate me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, great. So Gary Vee said, you know, like what they say isn't true. First time that this has ever happened to me. You know, so I'm like also telling myself all the reasons why it's not true. You know, you've been teaching for, at that time, it was like 8 years. I've taught over 200 teacher trainings. Like, this has never happened. This is one person out of thousands. Like, I needed to care for myself at that time, because nobody fucking else was at that moment. It was pretty fucking intense. Yeah. So the piece, because I want you to talk as well, is Something that I learned a long time ago. I was like in a very broken state. I just ended an 11-year relationship. I sold everything I owned. I went from, med school and nursing into coaching and teaching yoga full time. And then here I am. It's February 2019. I'm at an ayahuasca retreat in Peru by myself. I've gone through imposter syndrome. I've gotten rid of every client I ever had except 2 that were like, no, we're not leaving. And I'm like, okay, self-love. And that's my intention. And I don't know when I come out of it, but this is my intention. And so self-love, everything I did, when the yoga teacher said, set your intention, when the shamans would say, what's your intention? It's just self-love, self-love, self-love. My expectation of self-love was based on previous experience. Everybody will want to fuck me. I'm being 100% vulnerable right now. Everybody will want to fuck me, which then makes me hot and valid and worth it, right? Because my dad's mindset around women. And I will be like, I also will find myself beautiful. Like there was no internal like self-acceptance, like radical acceptance, like who I am right now is perfect. But it was like, and when I love myself, then I'll lose weight and then I'll make more money and then everybody will love me. So that was my expectation. My intention came through because I started to look in the mirror. Even now I can look and not think you are such a fucking gross ass piece of shit, which is literally, I wouldn't even look in the mirror because that's how I felt about myself. I was so disgusting. I just hated myself. Like all the partners that had treated me the way they had was all because I allowed them to, because I thought so shitty of myself. And I looked in the mirror and I didn't hate me that day. I didn't love me, but I didn't hate me. And I realized like, oh, I think that's more self-love I've felt in that moment than my entire life. So the intention always comes through, always, but our expectations really fucking ruin what we think something is.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because I feel like right after that, after your ayahuasca trip, where again, your expectations of what you were going to get from ayahuasca were so high. And then you came out of it and you were like, well, that's not at all what I got from it. Right? Like all these people, it's going to put my trauma in front of me and then it's going to take it away and I'm going to be healed. And then you came back and you were like, yeah, so my experience was not like everybody else's. And you and I ended up in Amsterdam at a Tony Robbins event.
We were there before that.
Are you sure? No, I feel like it was afterwards because, are you sure? Because you had gone to India prior.
Yeah.
And
February,
then you went
I know the timeline. February 2019, I went to ayahuasca. And no, Tony
and it
Robbins.
was March that we went to.
No, it was June because Summer graduated. It was before. It was 2018 that we went to Tony Robbins.
No, I'm talking about Amsterdam.
I was with the person I'm talking about leaving when we were in Amsterdam, remember?
No, I don't. What I do remember is you coming back from India, having a shaved head, or coming home, shaving your head.
Yeah.
You and I going to Amsterdam, and I swear, you were with him because we went afterwards. When it all happened, we were in the Tony Robbins event, and Tony he does this thing where he breaks you down or he builds you up, and he'll start to break someone with confidence down to show you that he can do it. He could have easily broken me down as well. But he even said to the woman, I think that you're great the way you are, so I'm not going to break you down, but know that people's words can tear you down. So let's move on to how we can also build people up. And he had, and I don't know if we told this story or not in the other ones, but he then was like, so who here doesn't think they're sexy? And Lynn was like, don't you fucking dare, don't you fucking dare. And I like grabbed her elbow and shot it up in the air. And he was like, and I saw him like zone in on her.
Yeah.
And then he like did his thing and he came over and he was like, get that girl a microphone. And he took a microphone to Lynn and she stood up and she's talking and she was like, she pointed at me and said, well, this is the person that I am comparing myself to. And he was like, as beautiful as she is, like, why are you comparing? And then we talk about Marilyn Monroe and how Marilyn Monroe was actually a size 16. She did not have a flat belly. And yet she was the most beautiful woman in the world in the 60s. And all these things. She was the woman's idol, all this stuff. And then through the next couple days, 2,000 people out of the 2,500 people in that room were constantly coming over to tell Lynn how beautiful she was and to tell us both how incredible our energy was and that we were affecting people just being in the room. That then led us to win his competition that he has within the room. And it was about the energy that we put off. It wasn't about the way we looked. It was about the energy we put off. We weren't just, like dancing like everyone's kind of moving like this. Lynn and I are like moving around like psychos and dancing. And when we were leaving the room, we'd be hopping out of the room and, hey, how's it going? And just all the things. And there, even for me, was the external validation of the fact that we were impacting all of these people. Now, that I feel like is one of the things that is a priority to me. I love impacting people. I love helping people. And you pointed out to me not that long ago, because we had this conversation around, I don't necessarily have people who stick around in my life for long periods of time. Like I have one friend that I've been friends with since elementary school, and even him and I had an off time, Jarrett. And we even had an off time for a few years because of a falling out between the two of us. And when we had the falling out, he came to me and said to me, I understand why your mom hates you so much. And I was like, wow, I don't even want to know. And he's like, no, listen. He's like, one of the reasons that I understand why she would have treated you the way she was is because when you're in my life, I enjoy you so much and all the things. When you're not there, all I wanted was for you to suffer, because I know the amazing impact you do have on my life when you're in it. And I was just like, holy shit. Again, external validation. It made me feel good. Why don't I notice this about myself? Why can't I love myself in this way? And even now in those moments, those are external validation to encourage you to love yourself. It's not to be like, in that moment, I like myself because you said so. Those are supposed to be reminders to us to accept ourselves. And the other day, after listening to my coach, I literally sat down and thought, what does it mean to accept myself just the way I am? And then I got this like hit, and it felt so gross. And you guys are probably going to laugh, and I hope you do, because this is my story. Every time somebody asked me, well, what does it look like? Because I would say, and I know this is offensive, so sorry to my mom, but I would say at the time, somebody said to me, one of my coaches at the time said, well, what is it that makes her so ugly? And I was like, okay, so if you watched Beetlejuice as a kid, do you remember when Beetlejuice would like pull his face off and all the snakes would come out and he'd be like, and that was him being a monster? When mom would freak out, that's what I would see. That's how I pictured her. So in turn, when I see myself turn into my crazy or into my bitchy or into my dark shadowed self, I see that. I see this monster. And even on yesterday's call with my coach, he said, but why do you think that that monster is terrible? What makes that monster terrible other than the attachment that you made with that monster? Why can't that monster be cute? Kind of like the purple monster story you told us. And so in that, what it brought up for me was, so what if I have momentary asshole moments? That's my shadow self. And without my shadow self, I then can't be apologetic for also being an asshole. So what acceptance looks like to me is acknowledging, and not, I have to stop beating myself up when I have an asshole moment, and instead go, oh, okay, that's a part of who I am. I was angry. I need to have some compassion for myself, because again, I would never talk to you or Lindsay or anyone if they had an asshole moment. I would never be like, wow, you're such a piece of shit. People don't behave like that. None of those things. Instead, I'd be like, hey, do you know you're kind of being an asshole? It's okay that you're being an asshole. I understand you're going through some things or whatever, but just acknowledging that you're being an asshole right now, that your shadow side is showing. And that's okay. However, I don't really want to be the front of your shadow side at the moment, so I'm going to take an exit. But do you know what I mean? Like for me, I think accepting that I have all these different parts and that I'm not a fucking perfect person and that I'm not going to act perfectly all the time and that I have shadow sides and that I also am dark as well as light.
Oh, fuck. Can I give you, like, as soon as you started speaking about it, I'm like, that's your shadow. And can I give my
Yeah,
my
of course.
personal opinion on what shadow side is? to me, what I've started to recognize is like the shadow is something that it's like, you can call it dark. You can even see it as like a negative. It literally, think about this again, Meridee. If you were talking to someone and you were like, oh, your asshole's showing.
No, I just heard you say it. I was like, oh man, yep. Pull your pants up. Oh shit. Okay, go on. Your
That was good.
asshole side is
Your
showing.
asshole side is showing. Also, considering that most of these people aren't assholes, that kind of lets you know that something's out of balance, right? So what's wrong? Like, what's wrong? Instead of just like, you're being a dick right now, it's like, why are you being a dick? Because you're not usually a dick. So when you start to recognize your own shadow side, you can actually see it as like a warning sign that your needs aren't being met. I have a perfect example. I was with a partner and we were at this farm in the middle of Costa Rica, and we were about to like separate for some time. And we were sitting down by the river and we were talking, and I said, I'm feeling jealous. This is the first time that I'd been in a relationship where I spoke about my feelings, where I acknowledged that I even had them. And I shared with him, like, I'm feeling jealous. And what that offered me in the moment, he was like, great, thank you for sharing. Like, why do you think? And it was like, well, because I'm leaving and now you're going to be here. And I know pretty much all your friends are girls. So the idea is that like, I have like self-proclaimed being a jealous person. And that's not true. That's a label. And a lot of the time, actually, that jealousy was quite warranted. If I look back now, it was a warning sign that something wasn't right. And instead, what happened was
She's
I was
frozen again.
Oh,
There
am
she
I?
is.
Okay.
No, you're back now.
Okay. What happened is I was gaslit for that jealousy. I was told that I was wrong and that I was crazy because I was jealous.
No,
But what I was
Oh,
back.
she's in and out for a second. You guys just give her a second. Oh, there.
Darn.
Are you there? That's
Am I
okay.
back?
Okay, go
Okay.
ahead. So you were gaslit for that.
So I was being gaslit for being jealous, basically, and told that I was crazy, but I actually wasn't crazy. I was picking up on my
Damn
partner's.
it. But there we go. She's back again.
I was picking up on my partner's behaviors that were inappropriate. So if I had actually listened to that jealousy, so now, okay, now we fast forward to sitting by the river. So for me, jealousy is crazy and it's bad and it's wrong. And here we're sitting down having a conversation and he's inquiring further into why I feel this way. And so instead of me being a crazy bitch, I was treated like a person that has feelings. And so he asked me why. And I was like, okay. And I started to say, you know, all these reasons. But what really I was doing was I was bypassing the fact that I was sad and that I was going to miss him. And underlying even that was that I myself needed just like a moment of love and connection. So it hit me in that moment, oh, this is shadow work, is like healing the fact that jealousy isn't wrong. It's just, it was quite misguided at the time. And then in this moment to acknowledge, it was a way that I could see that I needed a moment to give myself some love. Like literally, that was it. That's why I was feeling jealous. Now, historically, that would take me into like, jealousy is bad. I'm fucking crazy. I'm a crazy bitch.
So a couple things came up for me in that is one, our shadow side is it's only dark as long as we're not shining light on it. Right? So when you're looking at your shadow side, it's suddenly not a shadow side anymore. So it's not a negative side of you, it's just another side of you, which then goes over to like shame can't live in the dark. So when you're ashamed of your dark side, you're more likely to press it down and push it away and not let it surface and not let it just be a part of you. And yet that leads me to the second thought, which was, you can't hurt me with my own shadows if I know they're there.
Right.
So like you can't tell me, yeah, well, she's such a bitch or whatever it is, because people always try and use your things against you when they want to hurt you. How are you going to use that I'm occasionally a bitch against me when I acknowledge that, yeah, sometimes things are not in balance for me and I don't feel right and I don't act correctly that feels good, or that I don't act in alignment with myself, and that I act out of character because I am not in alignment with myself because something isn't in balance at the moment. How are you going to hurt me with that information when I already have that information?
When you forgive yourself for that information, because I think the shift really is that we do have the information, but we hide it. It's the shadow. That's why
Yeah.
it can hurt when someone comes at you. But once you've forgiven yourself for it, once you have seen that you are a human and that
And
it's
that you are right.
okay.
And that you're right where you're supposed to be right in this moment, because this leads you to that next lesson anyways. Right? Like, I'm not supposed to be perfect, because if I was perfect, I'd be dead. I would already have all the lessons I needed.
Or
So
you can even start to shift that a little bit, because I hear that a lot, is like, but you are perfect. Like you're perfectly you. Like you're perfectly this soul that came into this body that created a personality based on your experiences, because you really are this person called this name in this particular time in this life. And you're doing like Meridee couldn't be done any better by anybody else.
yes, 1,000% yes.
You're fucking perfect. Like that's the reality. And the problem is, the obstacle is the way. The problem is that you just think you're so inherently wrong. That you're
And why are we so compassionate with those around us and so hard on ourselves?
right?
So for me, when I do, and it's something I work on all the time. So when I start beating myself up, I will often refer back. Would I ever talk to my sister the way I'm talking to myself now? No. I would never be this hard on her and tell her you should know better. You can't know. Oh my goodness. You can't know better until you do better. And you can't know better and do better until you've experienced something to lead you there. So how are you supposed to be better when you don't even know what better looks like? So my shadow side is still a shadow side until you shine light on it, until you forgive yourself for it.
This happened yesterday. Rafa and I ended up kind of like having a thing. I went at him about what he was eating. He was making a double burger. Like,
Yum.
that's not okay. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to
Oh,
tell
I'm
him now
like,
that
hell
you
yes.
even said that. I was like, that's disgusting. Like, and then he said I was food shaming him. We didn't talk about it that night, but the next day we did. And I told you food's disgusting right now. I'm having a problem
Yeah.
with food again, right? And so he said that I was food shaming, and we were kind of like almost getting into argument again, but then actually like put the gloves down and just continued to talk. And I do have stories about like behavior, like I'm fucking controlling. Right? I feel like in my life, if I don't have chocolate in my house, then I won't eat chocolate.
Mhm.
Right? And if it's in my
Yep.
house, I'm going to eat it. So we just don't have it in my house. So what happens when my house is our house and somebody wants chocolate? Well, then I'll be on that person instead of being on myself. So again, agreements and kind of a lot of the things that we've been talking about, but like literally he's like, you food shamed me and you're so controlling, and can I say something that might upset you? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you're being like your mom. Now, where that comes from is stories that I have about being a kid and having like all these things being micromanaged. Because I am that way, I understand where she was coming from, because I understand that she's just trying to have some aspect of control in her life when things are so fucking chaotic. right? And even though things aren't really that chaotic, they appear to be really chaotic. And so I can control my environment the best way I can. It's very fucking clean, incredibly clean. It's like, there's so many things, food, exercise, and then I put that onto my partner, and then I say like agreements and like, how can we be together if we're so far apart on these different things? Like there's a lot of learning, but instead of being angry or upset, I was like, okay, I mean, like, it's true. This is a behavior. And so I think sometimes like mom personally takes these things very personally because as a kid, we're trained. Who are we trained by? We're trained by our mom and dad. They don't even know that they're training us, but they are, right?
Yep.
So then whatever they say or believe, like I recognize, I taught my kids how to love themselves. I made a conscious decision with my children. I'm not going to hit you and I'm going to let you touch me and I'm going to be really supportive. And so like I told them all the time they can do whatever they want. I love you so much. Right? 14 years old, my oldest starts. I find out she's fucking puking. She's cutting herself. She's fucking dudes. Like there's all these things that are going on. And that to me seems like someone who's distressed. I don't understand. You have everything. I didn't have half the shit you have. You have my support. What the fuck, man? And then it hit me. Do what I say, not what I do. I said, love yourself. You can do whatever you want. And then I treated myself like a piece of shit because I hated myself. So I literally taught my kid how to hate herself, even though I was saying I was so out of alignment. I was saying all these other things.
Yes.
So how I also did the same thing to my children. So it's like this isn't like a recognition of how terrible our fucking parents were. The reality is that I know, and I've called my mom many times, especially when I first had kids, and just said, I understand. I
Yeah.
understand. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry was what I said a
Yes.
lot. I'm
Yes.
like, imagine an unconscious being, that has a dude that's fucking around on her all the time. I don't know what the story is of like how this person was raised fully, if they were hit themselves or what went on. But all I know is like this person did the best job that they could. And that's not me sitting here being like that. And that job was complete shit because this is
Because
the
I'm so
product.
perfect.
This is the product that you also created based on your parenting. So the reality is like what we're doing here is becoming aware of the fucking patterns that we've picked up, which are basically coping mechanisms. So the
Yes.
fact that I'm controlling, yes, when we were younger, we had to ask for this. We could only eat these certain things. We weren't allowed to drink certain Cokes. Like there was a lot of control. And now I behave that way. And that's what Rafa was saying, only based on my stories. He doesn't know mom. He just says, like, can I say you're acting like this? And I was like, oh shit. And the moment there was not anger because he's like, I'm really sorry. And I'm like, don't be. The only way I can change this behavior, because what I was saying is like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to not fucking tell you what to eat. I don't know how to let you be you in my life.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, oh, because this is a coping mechanism because I feel out of control. Oh, so like, oh shit.
Yes.
Okay, that means I could do something else now. And it's not like, it's not at anybody personally. It's literally like, just like, oh, that's what I was taught. This is the wired nervous system. And now I get to do something else because my partner doesn't like being controlled or food shamed. And to be honest, when I sit there and I hear somebody say that I was fucking food shaming them, I am disgusted. No, I'm
Appalled at our own behaviors.
I'm realizing I'm a person and that was a reaction. And now I have the
Obviously.
opportunity to see the action and choose a different one. And come up with an agreement now that's not about like how Rafa lives, but more about when I start to control. Can we just find a way for you to say it like you're doing it again? A kind,
Yeah.
loving way so that I can see, oops, I fell back into pattern.
Yes.
Because one of the things you said you want people to take away from this is like how to love themselves. And I can't say I'm a fucking expert at it in
Nope,
any
me
way.
neither.
But
Me
I
neither.
have taken a lot of steps to even just that moment of like, I was just about to shit talk myself in my behavior. The only reason I would ever food shame someone is because I've food shamed myself and my body, and I haven't loved myself. And how I never want my partner to feel like I would do that ever, because that's that's disgusting to me. And I never want anyone to feel that way. So now instead of being like incredibly mean, and I'm being honest here right now, I'm not beating myself up. I'm like, oh, thank you for like acknowledging that pattern so that I don't keep doing that.
She's frozen again. Oh, there she is.
I don't want to keep doing that. Like
And I agree 1,000%. It's acknowledging in the moment the struggle that we're having, seeing it, and then not beating yourself up, because beating yourself up is self-hate, not self-love. Self-love is showing yourself compassion, understanding that I'm not perfect and that this is an experience that I'm having. And this all happened so that I can learn from this experience. And I have a choice right now. I can choose better behavior with myself, not even with everyone else. It's not even about changing the control moment with him, but acknowledging, okay, hey, something's going on with me, which is why I want to control him.
Yes.
What do I notice about myself?
Yes.
And also, why do I need to control? What am I feeling is out of balance right now? So when we're acting in ways that don't feel in alignment, noticing the moment and then really digging into that. Okay, so what's not in alignment for me to be coming after you? Oh, I'm not feeling great. I'm with you. We talked about this. I'm not feeling fantastic about the way my face looks because I have let all the filler out of my face, or these different things. So I am going to be way harder on the people that I'm looking at around me because I'm being hard on myself at the moment. But also, I'm a
Can we dig
43-year-old.
into it?
Yeah.
Are
Well,
you
yeah.
gonna let the filler go? Are you gonna let the filler go, or are you not?
I mean, I'm letting the filler go so that I can go see my doctor and have fat put in instead.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, no. And I'm not gonna bullshit anybody. I definitely am struggling with the aging thing. 43 years old. I don't feel like I thought I would feel at 43. I feel like I'm, in a peak. And then I'm like, I look at my face and I'm like, you're not in a peak, sweetheart. But I don't not like that's the thing. I know it's not fair because I wouldn't say that to you. I wouldn't say that to Lindsay. I wouldn't be like, well, you could use some filler in those cheeks. Instead, I'm over here being like, if you had a little filler in there, this would be, and I don't want to beat myself up. So I'm really working on this because these moments of letting the filler go so I can go see my doctor is a place for me to really look at my external validation, look at the fact that the external body that I have, because also I worked out with my physical coach today. And of course, he's got some emotional stuff that we talk about as well, as why is your body responding the way it's responding? In the sense that I said to him, like, I kind of feel a little bit chubby. And he was like, I'm going to tell you, you're not chubby, but we can also talk about the fact that you are retaining water. I can see it in your face and in your body. He said, but when did that start? And everything, my shoulder, this back, all started when I decided to take on a new coach and be stressed about tax season and all of the things. And he's like, every time he'd ask me something, well, when did this start? Well, when did this start, Meridee? When I started preparing for tax season, when I started being stressed out, when I started kind of putting the rest of my care off onto the side. He said, are you still doing yoga? And I was like, I don't have time for that shit right now. And he was like, he just kind of turned his head and looked at me and didn't have much to say. And he's like, and when did that start? And I was like, okay, I hear you. But, and he's like, no, as soon as you say but, you're saying I don't even acknowledge it anymore. It doesn't matter. And I was like, I know. And he's like, don't switch but for and. It's the same shit, Meridee. Right now, you're telling me that your self-care is not important enough. He said, so let's talk quickly about your calories. And I was like, I don't really want to talk about that right now. And he's like, yeah, because you're letting that slide too. And I was like, I'm still eating lunch. He's like, okay, good. I'm glad you're doing better than you did before. But
I'm still eating lunch.
Well, because I wasn't eating breakfast or lunch in previous. I was maybe hitting 900 calories. Okay. So I am doing better because I'm still getting to 1,600 calories. But 1,600 to 1,800 is a maintenance for me. And I said to him, well, I'm feeling fluffy. And he was like, are you eating the calories? And I was like, like, he's pointing out my own shit back in my face because it's not my fault, but it's my reasoning, well, I'm too busy.
Yeah.
Right. And these are the things like
Which
then
is you're not good enough. It's just you're not good enough. You're too busy
everything
to
comes
take
down
care
to
of
that.
yourself. Yes.
Yes. 1,000%. Well, I'm not good enough to be taken care of because I got to take care of everybody else. But
yes,
an example of when I felt the best, when I finally started putting myself first, when my kids were little and taking time. Yes, I got a sitter occasionally. Yes, I went and spent an hour by myself doing tanning or whatever it was, getting a pedicure. Taking time for myself made me a way better parent because when I came back to them, I actually wanted to be around them. You know what I mean? Like putting myself first made it so I actually could put other people up there with me. The minute that I put myself back behind everyone else, I'm not giving anybody anything because I'm giving you the last drops out of an empty cup.
right, which will not quench your thirst.
No. So
So
I feel like this is such a great place to
yes,
drop the mic.
yes, I do too. And
So,
I think just to hold you accountable, that if
yes.
this is a podcast on self-love and the whole thing started about like what was happening in November, it's time to take care of you. You know, one of the things that involves is like personal care. Like, look at what personal care is. And you were vulnerable and open about one of the things that is personal care that you totally let drop off.
Which one are you referring to?
The one that's maybe too much information.
Oh yeah, the too much information. Yeah, that was we were talking about masturbating, you guys.
Yeah.
We were talking about what it looks like when you're in that energy of feeling that good about yourself. And, you know, when you're feeling good about yourself, there's
Wanna
more
feel good.
sexual energy. You want to feel good in all the ways. And then how that has also dropped off for me because I don't have time for it. Except this has all surfaced because clearly I need to make time for the things that I need. And I'm sitting here telling my coach, I'm fucking killing it right now because I'm doing your coaching, doing my teacher training. I'm killing it with my taxes. I'm still running my business. And guess what? The most important thing of it all is the thing I've let go the most of. I've put myself on the back burner, my self-love, my self-care. And then when I talked to him, he was like, well, where's your self-care time? And I was like, when I come here in the morning. And he's like, this isn't self-care, Mary. He's like, sorry, but it's not. And I was like, well, what the fuck?
No
He's like, this is
matter
required.
no matter your design, okay? God made you a certain way. For everybody, double check right now. It doesn't take that long.
Yep. Fair. And so again, noticing that I've pushed this self-love off, no wonder my energy has shifted.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm killing it, but really I'm actually going to feel like I'm killing. Yes, I'm staying on top of the business things because they're the important things. But what's the most important thing is me.
That's when you're really fucking killing it.
And
Because
so,
everything else will just flow so perfectly because you have the energy to like, you'll make sure the shit's done after the shit's done.
Shit. Yeah. So I feel like I'm going to be focused on that. And that is our mic drop because I'm going to focus on that. We can totally come back to this and talk about those things. I feel like one of these days we should totally do a podcast on sex, masturbation, all of the things, because I feel like it's one of those like, we don't talk about that. And those are the conversations we have here. So
totally.
Thank you guys for joining us in this conversation. And I really hope that you've learned something because I know I have coming through all of it and leading to the fact that really I need to join back in my self-love and self-care to show myself that I'm the priority here, not all the businesses. And I keep telling myself that, you know, the business, it ends in April and I'll be able to take care of myself then, but I need to be focused on it now to stay on top of all the things.
Yes. And describing video for those that aren't watching the video, what I did, we need to get better at that because that's more inclusive. I stood up and showed everybody how your hand hangs right at your crotch because that's how God made you, and then made little back and forth movements to say it's not that much work. It doesn't take that much time. Yeah, so thank you everyone
Yeah.
for coming, and thanks for being open as always, Meridee, and peace out, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this spirited journey today.
We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of self-improvement with us. Two sisters who found their own unique paths.
Remember, life is a tapestry of experiences, and it's how we embrace them that makes all the difference.
So whether you're on your yoga mat, exploring mindfulness, or simply navigating life's twists and turns, always keep that spirit and sass alive.
We are Colynn and Meridee Hlokoff, and we're here to remind you that happiness and abundance are within reach.
Stay connected with us on social media and keep those questions and stories coming. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, beautiful souls, keep doing the work, keep sharing your experiences, and keep living a life that's authentically you.
And never forget to add a little extra sass to your day.
Spirit and sass, always.